Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SCORE Fairfield County's live webinar on how to sell almost anything to anybody and feel good about yourself. I'm Bob Hogan, the webinar coordinator and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County, and I'll be your host today. Our presenter today is Cliff Ennico, and more about Cliff in just a moment, but first some brief information on SCORE. SCORE is a national organization with over 320 chapters across the country and 11,000 volunteers. Locally here at SCORE Fairfield County, we have over 120 volunteers with a wide range of industry, process, and subject matter expertise. And we offer three primary value-added services for small business owners. We offer one-on-one counseling, face-to-face, by telephone, email, or Skype. And if you're interested in one-on-one counseling, please go to our website at score.fairfieldcounty.org. And you will see a Request a Mentor tab there where you can sign up for free one-on-one counseling. We also offer a wide range of educational workshops and webinars like we're doing today, about 150 during the year. And lastly, we offer a wide range of extensive resources on our website, including access to a network of subject matter experts. Our next webinar will be 2 weeks from today on Tuesday, March the 6th, when Kate Berg will present digital marketing. It's all about the customer experience. And look for more specifics on our website at fairfieldcounty.score.org. We have set aside some time for Q&A today at the end of Cliff's presentation. So if you have a question, please use the chat feature in the lower left-hand side of your screen today. And you can put questions on there at any time during the presentation. And if Cliff doesn't take it during the presentation, as I say, we'll reserve a few minutes at the end for questions. But we will end sharply at 1 o'clock to respect your time. I often get lots of questions about access to materials. The session is being recorded. And there's a link to the recording that will be on our website at fairfieldcounty.score.org within the next day or two. So again, you can get a recording of the webinar and the materials on our website as soon as it's posted. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker. Cliff Ennico is a frequent SCORE workshop presenter and a nationally recognized small business legal and tax expert. His weekly advice column, Succeeding in Business, is syndicated nationally and appears in dozens of major newspapers and small business websites across North America. An attorney and small business consultant based in Fairfield, Connecticut, Cliff has helped over 15,000 businesses during his 36-year career and is the author of 16 books, his most recent being The Crowdfunding Handbook. I'll now turn it over to Cliff. Cliff, all yours.
Hey, thanks, Bob, and thanks to everybody for signing up and showing up today. Some of you are probably scratching your head right now listening to Bob's little introduction. You're probably saying to yourself something like, wait a minute, a lawyer teaching me how to sell? This is going to be good. Because let's face it, when we think of the most marketing-forward professions that there are, lawyers don't exactly come to the top of the list, do they? They just don't. But I'm a little bit different than most lawyers. Some of you know who I am. Being a lawyer is as much being a business like anything else, and just like any other business, I have had to learn how to sell myself. Selling is, in my opinion, the key business. Now, if anybody here who tells that I'm a lawyer, just take a look at this slide here. This is when we use it all of our at the beginning of all of our presentations, but it's especially important for me. Obviously, while I do a lot of stuff for SCORE, I am not a SCORE employee. I'm not, an official spokesperson for SCORE, so anything that I say here is strictly my own views and nobody else's. But more importantly, we're not going to get into a lot of legal and tax stuff today, but some of you guys might have some questions, and if you do, I'm going to try to answer them. Just be aware that there's a very big difference between giving out legal information and giving legal advice. I don't know any one of you well enough to be able to say, well, this is what you should do and this is what you should do. So while I'll try to answer your questions to the best of my ability, nothing I say here should be viewed as a substitute for actual legal or tax advice that should be rendered by a professional that lives where you live. So without any further ado, let's get started. Selling is, in my opinion, the essential business skill. I mean, there are three essential business skills. There's selling, there's negotiating, and there's bookkeeping. And SCORE has programs on all three of these things. But selling, to me, is the most important. Nothing in business happens unless something gets sold. If you are doing something and nobody is buying what you are doing, we call that a hobby. We do not call that a business. There are a lot of things in this world that are very fun to do, but nobody pays you to do them. And we call them a hobby. The IRS, of course, if anybody has a tax or accounting background, the IRS has a whole set of definitions about when something is a hobby, when something is a business. To me, the only real difference is in a business, people are paying you for what you do, and people do not buy anything until they are sold. Selling is something you have to be done. So, what's the big deal? Okay. Questions, anybody? We're done. Okay, that's it. It only took me 1 minute to get through this whole program. It's obviously a big deal. Nobody likes salespeople. People make a much bigger deal out of this than they should because they just don't like salespeople. Nobody does. When we think of a salesperson, what do we think of? We think of somebody that we don't want to be. We think of telemarketers. We think of these unctuous car salespeople. Some of you older folks online might remember the Joe Isuzu ads, from the 1980s. This very smarmy guy that was trying to sell you a used car. Willie Loman from Death of a Salesman, right? The guy that he spends the whole play trying to commit suicide. Nobody wants to be a salesperson. Nobody wants to be thought of that way. And let's face it, nobody likes to be sold. It's intrusive. It's interfering. It makes us think we're inferior. Anybody on this call, and I would raise my hand too, who's ever been sold something that they realize later that they didn't want or need, you feel cheated. You feel ripped off. Everybody has buyer's remorse. Go to any UPS store and you will see thousands of examples of buyer's remorse where people bought something, usually online, and they're all returning it. Everything is getting returned these days. You go to any UPS store, that's all you see are boxes and boxes of stuff being returned. Nobody likes to be sold. But here's the positive message here. It's okay not to like these people, telemarketers, unctuous car salespeople, because what they're doing isn't selling at all. They're not selling at all. What they are doing is something quite different. What they are doing is what we call cold calling. Cold calling is, I got a basement full of dead fish right now that are rotting away moment by moment, and I'm really hoping that somebody on this call is in the mood for seafood tonight because I can give you a good deal. That's cold calling. You got an inventory, and you got to get rid of it somehow. So you'll tell anything to anybody to get them to buy whatever that rotting inventory is. That's cold calling. And let me tell you something. I've been doing this now for 40 years of my life now. I've been working with small businesses, working with entrepreneurs. Cold calling doesn't work. Seldom, if ever, does cold calling work. It's a waste of your time, and it's an insult to the people that you're talking to. Now, some of you who are fans of SCORE are probably scratching your head and saying, well, wait a minute, Cliff, I just looked at your YouTube channel, and you do have a video up there on how to be a more effective cold caller, and I do, absolutely. Look, somebody pays me to do something, I'm going to do it, okay? But seriously, if you watch that video, the first lesson is you try to avoid doing cold calling as much as possible. Cold calling is a last resort for the truly desperate. Very few things can be sold effectively using cold calling. The methods that I'm going to teach you today have nothing to do with cold calling. So what's the right way to sell, okay? This is something, what I'm going to be sharing with you in the next few minutes is something it has taken me 40 years to figure out. It's probably the most valuable information I have learned in 40 years of working with people like yourself, people who run their own businesses, people who are thinking about starting small businesses, self-employed folks. There is a way that you can sell just about anything to just about anybody. It's effective. It's about 99% effective. It's ethical, and you won't even think of yourself as a salesperson. The thought will never even occur to you, and it won't occur to the people that you're selling. It's an amazing, amazing tool. It's a 3-step process, okay? But wait a minute, okay? Before you can understand the 3 steps, if I were to try to explain the 3 steps to you right now, you would all shake your heads and say, what is this guy talking about? This doesn't make sense. This is some foreign language that he's speaking, okay? Before you can understand the 3 steps to successful selling, you have to know something about human behavior. You have to understand why people buy. That is essential. before you can understand how to sell to anybody, you have to understand what motivates people to buy things, psychologically. Why is it that you've ever bought anything? Why is it that I have ever bought anything? Believe it or not, there's some very, very hard answers to that question. But before we get started, I have to give a trigger warning for those of you who are extremely sensitive. What you are about to learn is radical, extremely powerful information. What I'm going to be doing in the next 10 to 15 minutes may stand on its head some long-standing cherished beliefs you have about how business works. I am going to say that the textbooks are all wrong. And that's always a very radical thing to say, but give me a few minutes and I think I can back it up. Okay, so for those of you okay, good, everybody, nobody dropped off the call, so that means that you are all truly diehards. I love you guys, I really do. Okay, so why does anybody buy anything? Here's a dirty little secret about the business world. It's taken me a long time to learn this. There are two reasons, and only two, why anyone buys anything. There's only two reasons in the entire world why you've ever bought anything. There's only two reasons in the entire world why I have bought anything. As a consumer, I am no better and no smarter than anybody else. You can use these techniques to sell to me if you want to. And I will, of course, I will understand exactly what you were doing, but I will not be offended. Okay, but here's where I differ from the world. And now we're going to take a leap of faith here. Contrary to what all the textbooks say, the two reasons are not needs and wants. Read any article on marketing, any book on marketing, any webinar, any program, and everybody says, the reason people, if you're selling to people, you've got to appeal to their needs and their wants. And I am here to tell you, verily, verily, I say unto you, that is wrong. Those are not the two reasons why people buy things. In fact, I can actually go a step further in saying I see people making this mistake all this time. They're trying to sell people things that they need or that they want, and it's an absolute waste of time. They're getting nowhere. Selling people the things you think they need or want is a guaranteed path to failure when you're trying to sell stuff. Let's explore this a little bit. Why is it especially that needs do not work? Before you can buy something you need, two things have to happen. And they rarely happen in the real world of business. They only happen in textbooks. The first thing that has to happen, you have to know that you need something. Okay, so right now, do you know all the things that you need in life? Of course not. That's why you're on this webinar right now. I mean, you're on this webinar precisely because you're not comfortable that you know how to sell, and you're hoping that someday I'm going to give you some really good information about this instead of getting all philosophical with you. I was a philosophy major in college, by the way. Some of that will show through, by the way. You used to be able to get away with that, majoring in philosophy. Now, of course, you can't do that. Unless, of course, you're going to law school. That's probably your one hope. You have to know that you need something. So if I've got something that I think you need, the first thing I have to do is I have to persuade you that you need it. I have to get you to buy into that. I got to get you to nod your head up and say, yeah, Cliff, you're right. Never thought about this before, but yeah, you're right. I do need this thing that you're trying to sell me. Do you know all the things you know? Absolutely not. Who needed back? Those of you who are a little older, go back to the 1970s. Back in the 1970s, the early 80s. Here's a little trivia question, by the way. When did the first personal computer come out? What year? When did Apple come out with the Apple II, which was the first real personal computer? Answer? Most of you would probably say, well, mid-'80s, late 80s. 1976 is when the first computer came around. But you're not 100% wrong. If I ask you then, well, when did you buy your first personal computer? Most of you would say, mid-'80s, late 80s. That would be about right? About 1985 or so is when most of that. So think about that. Between 1976 and 1985, all of the personal computer manufacturers, Apple, IBM, Hewlett-Packard was even in the game back then, Xerox was in the game back then, all these companies making personal computers, and we all know that they're going to be the next big thing. It took them 9 years spending tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on advertising and promotion to get you to buy into the idea that having a personal computer at home was a good idea and that you really needed one of these things. It took them 9 years and millions of dollars. I'm assuming most of you don't have that kind of time or that kind of money to get your sales message across. People don't know what they need. You have to persuade them that they need something, okay? And sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes people will nod their head and say, well, I think I need this, but they're not really sure, and as a result, they never buy. But here's the real kicker. This is the real reason why people don't buy things they need. Even if you know you need something, even if I just mention it and you say, oh, yep, you're right, Cliff, absolutely, no, don't spend any more time. You're right, I need this thing. I got to have it. Do you always buy it right here and now? Are you prepared to make the commitment right now to buy this thing from me? Probably not, without hesitation. Sales executives, sales trainers have told me that people make up their minds to buy something in 5 seconds or less. Isn't that amazing? People make up their minds to buy something. The more time I'm yammering on, talking about my product, my service, its benefits, its features, and all the stuff that you're supposed to talk about when you're making a sales pitch, the more I have to talk, the less likely it is that you are going to buy the thing from me. People have a tendency to talk themselves out of things over time. They don't talk themselves into things over time. If I'm not hitting home with my sales message in 5 to 10 seconds at a networking meeting or something, I'm on to the next person. I'm not going to waste my time trying to get you to where you're never going to be. Okay. And by the way, if you think I'm wrong about this, let me give you a classic example. And forgive me, I'm a lawyer. It's one that I'm very familiar with. How many of you on this call right now have a will? A document that says how your property is going to be disposed after you die. Okay? Well, some of you, maybe some of your older folks might have one, but I guarantee most of you don't. A half to two-thirds of you on this call do not have a will. Now, let me ask you, why is that? Is it because you don't need one? I mean, of course you need one. Everybody knows they need a will. I don't have to sell you on that. In fact, let me tell you something. Up until about 8 or 9 years ago, I did not myself have a will. And I'm a lawyer, for crying out loud. I mean, if anybody knows they need a lawyer, they need a will, it's me, right? Well, why is it that people put off, doing this? They know they need it, and all the lawyers, you got to have a will, you got to update. If you're starting a business of your own, you should update your will every 5 years, as your business grows. And we all nod our heads, yeah, we got to do that, yeah, you're right, but nobody does it, That's the way and by the way, don't hate people for that, okay? These people are your customers. This is human nature we are talking about here. Okay, we're not talking business now. We're talking human nature. People don't like to think about certain things. They don't like to think about their own death. And if there's anything worse than thinking about your own death, it's thinking about all the undeserving people who are going to get all your assets if you die prematurely. I got some younger relatives in the next generation that I don't really want to get all my hard-earned assets. I'm not really so sure they're quite ready for prime time yet. The thought of them running off with all my hard-earned money after 40 years of practicing law kind of makes me sick to my stomach, quite frankly. So that could be one reason why you don't get a will. But that's just my point. Even though you know you need something, you're not always prepared to buy it right here, right now, in the present moment without hesitation. And those are your customers. The stuff that you're selling, they're looking at that exactly the same way as you're now looking at this will that I just talked about. Okay, so needs and wants do not work. Okay, that's one of my radical messages for you. Needs and wants, especially the needs part, people do not buy things because they need them. Get that out of your head. So, what does work? What are the 2 reasons why people buy, why anybody buys anything? What are those 2 reasons? The first reason people buy stuff, passions. Passions. Let's look at some examples here of passion sales. A passion, anything that makes you feel good about yourself as a person or as a professional or as a business person, anything that enhances our worldview and our view of life is something that we are passionate about. And if you're passionate about something, there's a lot of things that you will buy to gratify those passions. Let's look at some examples of passion sales. Entertainment, books, movies, Broadway, any kind of entertainment. We don't need entertainment, right? But we love it. We love being entertained. We love stories of all kinds, right? No matter how they're presented to us. Entertainment, sports and hobbies. Unless you have a basement full of rats, you do not need a golf club in your home. You do not, okay? Nobody needs golf clubs. But if you know any golfers, by the way, they are passionate about their sports. There are two kinds of people. There are golf fanatics and there are people who do not play golf. There's nothing in between those two groups, okay? We all know that. I mean, passionate golfers will spend thousands of dollars on a titanium head driver that will give them an extra 2 feet off the tee. They will do that. They are, crazy people, but I love them, of course. If you're a golfer out there, I don't want to offend anybody. Rare coins. If you know a coin collector and you know where he or she can find that one coin they need to complete their set of Mercury dimes, believe me, you've got their total undivided attention. They will board a plane and travel halfway across the country to get that last coin. Anybody who's passionate about a hobby. Luxury items. You do not need a Lamborghini to drive to and from work every day. You do not. A secondhand beat-up Toyota will do just as well, if not a Yugo or something like that. If you are driving a Lamborghini to and from work or the country club or wherever, there is something else going on with you, okay, psychologically. There's something else that needs to be gratified by your doing that. Also, now let's get down and dirty here, now, because these are not always pleasant things to talk about. Let's talk about addictions. Let's talk about alcohol, tobacco, pornography. I mean, addictions are passions. I mean, if you're a drug addict, you got to get your fix. And you will pay anything to get that fix and go to any lengths to get that fix. Not a pleasant subject to talk about, but let me offer you something here that may sound a little cynical, but I think it's absolutely true. One of the best things that can happen to you in your business is for people to become legally addicted to your product or service. Legally addicted to your product or service. Starbucks coffee, anyone? By the way, you don't need to spend $6 on a cup of coffee, people. Once you've gotten used to Starbucks, especially the dark roast, which I happen to be passionate about, you cannot go back to drinking Folgers or instant Nescafe or any of that stuff. You simply cannot do it. It tastes like water. And by the way, if you are a regular Starbucks drinker, go off the wagon for a week and watch what happens. You are going to have stomach cramps. You are going to be in pain. You are going through withdrawal, just like any drug addict does that goes off their drug. Seriously, try this sometimes. If you think I'm lying, try this sometimes. There's stuff out there you can become legally addicted to, and if you are selling that kind of stuff, I want you as my client. Okay, so and by the way, if you're having any trouble thinking about passions, I think I have time to do this. Here's a little trick. If you're having trouble thinking about passions, think of the 7 deadly sins. Okay, I don't think they're particularly sinful. These are just 7 very common emotions that most of us have as human beings, and whole industries have been based on the 7 deadly sins. Pride, the whole self-improvement industry is based on people's pride. Lust, what can I say? Sex sells. Greed, anything to do with Wall Street. I got this hot new mutual fund. Will pay you 12% return on investment no matter what the economy is doing, right? That's how Bernie Madoff sold all those poor people, right? Pride, lust, greed, envy. I got something you don't have. The guy who's driving the Lamborghini, the guy who's also driving the smart car, by the way, he's a different kind of envy kind of person. He wants people to see him as socially progressive and environmentally forward and all of this kind of thing. I mean, seriously, when you are driving down a highway and you're passed by a smart car, that's a statement. That's not just, somebody passing you on the road. That's a statement. Greener than thou, I'm saving the planet, you're not. There's a little bit of that. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there aren't people who are passionate about the environment. There certainly are a lot of people who are, especially these days with climate change and all that. But there are a lot of people, even more, who want to be seen that way and perceived that way. And you can sell a lot of stuff to folks like that. So pride, lust, greed, envy, anger, negative political ads that make you want to hate the other candidate, and make you vote for anything that's not him, even if it's a monkey with no brain. I mean, that's, what negative political ads are about. We just went through a big presidential election last year. You know what that's all about. Okay, I don't have to lecture about that. Sloth, which is laziness. Sloth, which is laziness, which is anything to do with convenience, is an appeal to people's laziness. A technology that makes me do things quicker, or I don't have to use my body as much, or anything like that. Any appeal to convenience is an appeal to people's sloth or laziness. And then finally, eating and drinking too much. Gluttony, it's called. And that's something, of course, I can't help you with. I can't think of any good examples there. Of course not. Anybody who has ever seen me knows that I have had some close encounters with cupcakes in my life. Let's just say it that way. Gluttony is one of the 7 deadlies I know something about. So the 7 think of the 7 deadlies. They're not the only passions that are out there, but they're a great place to begin because a lot of people have them. And you can build entire business plans around one or more of the 7 deadlies. The other set of emotions that make people buy stuff are fears and anxieties. Fears and anxieties. And these are even more powerful in some respects than appeals to people's passion. In a rough economy, people will cut back on their passion purchases, but they will spend more money on the things that help them sleep better at nights. If you have a product or service that helps people sleep better at nights, stop worrying or worry less about a particular thing, you can sell a ton of stuff to those people. Let's look at examples of fear sells. Insurance, right? I mean, let's face it, most of us don't like to think about our own death, but the one thing that does worry us is what's going to happen to our beloved ones, if we were to die, prematurely with, millions of dollars left on our mortgage and stuff like that. This is how insurance salespeople work. They don't sell you a policy. They get you scared. They scare the crap out of you, basically, is what they do to get you to buy their product. Have you thought about what would happen? Would your son be able to attend college if you were to get hit by a bus tomorrow? That's what they do to you. They scare the crap out of you. Home security systems, burglar alarms. You ever see the ads on TV? It's always the same ad. I don't care what the company is. It's always the same ad. It's a house in the middle of nowhere. There's a creep in a ski mask trying to break in, and who's in the house? It's always the same 2 people. Mother is bathing the baby. There's never an adult male around, except for the burglar. There is no adult male in any of these commercials, okay? Why do they? And by the way, if you know anything about burglars don't work like that. Burglars don't want people in the house when they hit. That's the last thing they want. Don't ask me how I know this, by the way, but just trust me on this one, okay? Let's just say that my clientele tends to run the entrepreneurial gamut. Can we say it that way? Some of my clients are a little bit more risk takers than others. Let's just leave it at that. But seriously, if you know anything about burglars, they don't work like that. So here Madison Avenue is giving a totally false presentation of the way that burglars work for the sole purpose of scaring the crap out of you and buying this thing that you probably don't need, most of the time anyway. So burglars. Now, let's be very frank. Lawyers, okay, I'm kind of in the fear business too. Let's be very honest about this. Okay, people do not, this is going to come as a huge surprise to many of you, but people do not call their lawyers when they are having a nice day. It just doesn't happen. There are 2 people you never call when you are having a nice day. You never call your lawyer and you never call your orthopedic surgeon. You don't call those 2 people, okay? You probably don't call your insurance agent too. Okay, I'll add that as a third one. Bob made that as a comment. I think he's right about that. You don't call their lawyers when you're having. When people call me, the first words, Cliff, thank God you picked up. Okay, how bad is it? Okay, the wolf has already broken down the door. How much of your body has he eaten here? Okay, let's start with that. I'm in the fear business too. People do not buy, legal services, because they're excited about things, at least most of the time. Okay, again, fear selling is a key part of how you sell. In bad economies, people will cut back on their passion purchases, but will actually increase spending on fear purchases. Well, okay, Cliff, I think I'm seeing where you're going here. It's all about fears and passions, but how do I know which to use? How do I know which one is more effective? Well, most products and services have both a fear sell and a passion sell, depending on who the customer is. Okay? Let's take, this is my favorite example. Let's talk about perfume for a moment, cosmetics. Perfume for women, cologne for men. Okay? You're in the perfume business. You're selling this stuff. Are we selling passion or are we selling fear? Well, that's a tough one, isn't it? Let's take 2 cases here. Let's take our case number 1 is a young 20-something urban professional, male or female, going to a nightclub on Saturday night. They are splashing on perfume, or if they're a man, cologne. What are they trying to accomplish? What is their goal in doing this? Answer, lust. Yep, Let's be very honest about it. This is one of the 7 deadlies we talked about a minute ago. They are looking to attract people of the opposite sex or maybe the same sex. I mean, there's a lot of different kind of clubs in most big cities. And by the way, I'm not going for a cheap laugh there. Okay, I'm not going for a cheap laugh there. One of the things you're going to learn if you're in the perfume business and the cosmetics business, gay men on average buy several times more personal care products than heterosexual men do. There are statistics to support this. So if you are in the perfect perfume or cosmetics business and you are targeting men and males, I think you have to be a little gay-friendly here, because that's going to be a very big part of your market. It has nothing to do with politics or anything like that. It has to do with simply understanding what motivates people to buy things. Okay, so that's the thing. So our case number one, if we are selling to this young 20-something urban professional, gay or straight, male or female, going to a nightclub on Saturday night, we're going to use a passion sell. You know, our product has genuine cockroach pheromones. You will attract everything in sight, whether you want it or not. I mean, you know, whether you want it or not, you will have your choice. That's always the message here. You will have your choice of partner, even though you are butt ugly. That will happen. Okay, that is always the subliminal message that's going on. By the way, if you think I'm cynical, look at perfume ads on television and tell me I'm wrong. Okay, seriously, even if you're butt ugly, you will have. There's hope for you. Use our product, and at least you'll smell okay. Okay, now, but now let's shift gears now. We're still in the perfume business, but now our customer is a 70-something female, woman in her 70s, going to her weekly bridge or mahjong luncheon or her luncheon with her friends. Okay, now what is her objective here? Now she's putting some perfume on. What is her objective? Is it lust? Is she trying to attract all the guys in the nursing home? You know, the answer is I don't think so. Been there, done that. Although I will tell you there is an exception. This is changing, by the way. I always am very careful not to stereotype people. I really worry about this. This is changing in a very big way. Some of you probably don't know this. A couple of years ago, I took a trip down to a place in Florida. Some of you know it. It's called The Villages. It's a huge complex of senior housing, about an hour north of Orlando, Florida, and it actually covers like several thousand acres. It covers like 2 or 3 different counties. It's the country's largest senior housing development, and it's divided up into little communities called villages, and everybody drives golf carts. They don't allow cars there. You have to drive a golf cart or something like that, and you know, it's everybody's. And everybody's. I mean, I went down there and I noticed everybody was extremely healthy and extremely good-looking. You didn't see a single pot belly down there. And I didn't think anything of it. I was giving a talk at the Barnes & Noble down there. Anyway, but about a month after I did this talk down there, I was in my barber shop, and I was picking up a copy of U.S. News & World Report, and I was looking at it, and the cover story was all about the epidemic of sexually transmitted diseases among the elderly. And guess where the epicenter of this epidemic was? The Villages in Florida. There are, seriously, 80-something hot tub orgies going on in the Villages right now, even as I am giving this presentation right now. And by the way, whenever I give this talk live, I always have a lot of fun with this. Hey, now, and all of you people who are on this call right now who are over 60, you all dropped off the call right now. You are all talking to your travel agent and going on travel sites looking for the next cheapest flight down to Orlando. I know this. Hey, the hell with the Northeast. I am going to the promised land. This is the best information SCORE has ever given me in all of its deep presentations. Thank you. You know, this is great. But seriously, so my point is, this whole thing may be changing about, you know, the passion sell to older people. Just, you know, times change and people change with it. You know, but let's just say we're talking about a traditional 70-something female, not somebody who lives in the Villages or some other hot spot here. She's getting ready to go out and she's splashing on perfume. What is her objective? Well, some of you would say, well, she's trying to appear younger and still with it. But let's get down and dirty here, people. We all know what's going on here. She does not want to smell like an old woman. That is why she is doing this. Okay? You know, let's face it, it is no secret that as we get older, our body chemistry changes, and not always in a very pleasant way. And, you know, it's something that we probably should try to mask at some point. And by the way, please, I am not being sexist here. I am not. Men have exactly the same issue that women have when it comes to this stuff. It's just that as men, we don't give a crap. We don't. And there's statistics to support this. You can spend millions of dollars selling cosmetics and perfume to older women in their 60s, 70s, and above, but you're not going to make too much money selling male cosmetics to men in those age groups, with a couple of exceptions. Exception number one, if they are gay. Exception number two, if they are Italian American. Okay, that's just, and let's just not go into that any further. Okay, I think I've gone about as far down that limb as I dare to go. My point is, for the case number two, we're going to use more of a fear sell, the fear of being ostracized, the fear of being left alone. I think that's the way we're going to sell perfume to case number two, whereas with case number one, we're going to go for the sex appeal there. Okay, that's all I'm trying to say here. This is my most important message here, folks. Fears and passions rule the world of selling. I mean, yes, it's true at a certain level we all need food. If we don't eat, we die. But whether we satisfy that need with a broccolini salad or a Big Mac with bacon and cheese has everything to do with our fears and passions. Okay, so let's just get that out of the way right now. It's not about needs and wants. It's about fears and passions. What I've just given you, by the way, is some very, very powerful information. And I've tried to make it as funny as possible, but when you sit down and think about it, you really can't think of any two other reasons why people buy stuff. People buy things either because they're excited about it, because it turns them on in some way, which is passion selling, or because it will help them sleep better at nights, which is fear selling. Okay? Once you've bought into this, and some of you may not still, but give it some thought, and you'll probably think over time that I'm right. Once you've bought into fears and passions as the key buying motivators, selling is easy. So now that we've done this, now I can tell you what the 3 steps are. Step 1, get your customer. I'm assuming this is a live sales pitch. I'll talk a little bit about selling online a little bit later. Get your customer talking about their fears and passions. Don't even talk about the biggest mistake that salespeople make. They start talking too soon about what's in their inventory, about what they've got in their kit. Don't resist that temptation. Get the other person talking. You should be doing less than 10% of the total talking during a sales pitch. They should be doing all the talking, and what they should be talking about are their fears and passions. It's the easiest, what turns them on, what keeps them awake at nights. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. These are the 2 things we spend most of our lives talking about. Think about it. The next time you're at a bar with some colleagues after work, or you're at Thanksgiving dinner with your family, think about what are the things that you all talk about. You talk about the things that worry you and the things that you're passionate about, the things you love. These are the 2 things we spend most of our time. In fact, social scientists tell us, social psychologists tell us, this is how we pick our friends and sometimes our lovers. It's very, the people you like, the people that you fall in love with may not look anything like you physically, but it's really very hard to like someone who doesn't empathize with any of your fears and passions. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we hate those people. I'm saying we don't care about them very much. I just don't get that person. I don't get Cliff. We're just not simpatico. What we're saying here is that Cliff does not empathize with our fears and passions. One of the surest ways to get someone to like you is to show that you empathize with their fears and passions. It's very hard to dislike someone who shows that they care about how you feel about things. They share your passions, or at least they empathize with them. I am not an avid sailor myself. I don't sail at all. I don't have the time. But if I'm talking to an avid sailor, one of my first questions is going to be, hey, I see pictures of sailboats all over the place. You're obviously a very avid sailor. Tell me, do you race competitively, or is it just a fun thing you do? You're cruising on the weekends. If I do that, he or she is going to be talking for an hour about the thing that they're passionate about most in this world, which is sailing, and they're going to like me. You probably, if you've taken any kind of sales training before, they always tell you one of the first things you do is you got to get the prospect, the customer, to like you. Well, I just taught you how to do it. Get them to talk about their fears and passions and show some connection there. A lawyer teaching you how to make friends. Does it get any better than this, folks? It really doesn't. Okay, seriously. But that's only step 1. Remember, we have a goal here. We have to sell stuff. Get the person talking about their fears and passion, then direct the conversation to one or more targeted fears and passions that you can do something about. Your goal is not just to have a conversation or to make a friend. Your goal is to sell something. Your goal is to get your buyer. What you want is to get your buyer to feel a particular fear or passion right now in the present moment. You want them to get them to feel that. You want to be able to look in their eyes and see, hey, they're feeling that fear or passion right now. Then step 3, when you see you've got them, when their mind is focused now on this fear or this passion that they weren't thinking about 10 minutes ago, now you offer the solution. I can help you with that. I know how you can solve that problem. I know a solution to that. I know where you can get the answer to that. I don't know that myself, but there's this Mercury dime I saw on eBay the other day. It looks like it's in exactly the condition you want, and it's a local seller. It only is going to involve a trip to New York. You want me to send you the link? This is what selling is all about. The buyer will listen to you because you have pre-qualified them in steps number 1 and 2. This is the difference. Now you open your mouth. In steps 1 and 2, the other person is doing all the talking. Now you open your mouth, and now you say, hey, and they will listen to you now because you're speaking their language. You're dealing with that fear, that passion that they are experiencing right now in this moment. I'm going to give you just a little example of this, and then I'm going to tell you a cute story. Okay. Let's say I was a lawyer that was trying to sell you an LLC, a limited liability company. Some of you people know about what this is. Some of you don't, but you don't have to. Okay, just take it on faith. There's something out there called an LLC. If I was trying to sell you one, here's how I would do it. Ladies and gentlemen, you're all either run your own businesses or you're planning to start them someday soon. If you're like everybody I've ever worked with in that situation, one of the things that's kind of worrying you is that you might screw up something, somebody's going to sue you, and you're going to lose your house and everything you own. Am I right about that? And by the way, you'd be crazy not to worry about that because that could happen. And I can tell you stories about clients of mine who lost everything because they just did something bad in business and they didn't correct for it in time. But I can tell you this, you don't have to live with that. There are some things we lawyers that can do to put a wall up between your business assets, the stuff that you use in your business, and your personal assets, everything else, okay, that you own. With one of these wall things in place, if you do have a business and God forbid somebody does try to sue you, well, they can still get to your business stuff, but they can't get to your personal assets. All that stuff's behind the wall, and they can't get it. That stuff is safe and protected. One of these wall things we call an LLC. Okay, do you want to hear more? How many of you are going to say no to a sales pitch like that? What did I do here? Well, I kind of skipped step number 1 because I don't have time. I didn't get you to talking about your fears and passions. I went right to step number 2, and I kind of scared the crap out of you, didn't I? 5-10 minutes ago, you weren't thinking, well, gee, if I do something bad in my business, I could lose my house. I went right to that and painted a picture of you losing your house because you screwed something up in your business, right? I scared you a little bit. But I did it with an ethical goal in mind. I didn't do it just for the purpose of scaring you, like that evil clown in Stephen King's It. I am doing this because I want you. There are things you can do about it. I want to wake you up to the fact that there are some things like the LLC that can help prevent that from happening. This is how you sell, and this is how the 3 steps work in practice. Okay? I'm going to skip over this slide. If I have time, I'm going to do this at the very end, if it's all right. Because I've only got about, I think, another 10 minutes or so before we go to questions and answers, but I do want to go back to that a little bit. I want to talk about specific sales situations, but that's the key. Those are the 3 steps to selling. Get the other person talking about their fears and passions, focus in, zero in, laser in on a fear or a passion that you can do something about, and then offer the solution. Hey, I got this. I know exactly what you need, and I can do it for you. That kind of thing. And by the way, when we talk about selling, we do talk about needs and wants, but that's not really what's going on. What we're doing here is we're appealing to very subliminal fears and passions that are sometimes under the surface, and that sometimes people don't even know that they're feeling. I mean, when we see something in a store window that we really want, or online that we really want, what we say is, the words that come out of our mouth is, "Hey, I really need that." But what's really going on is, I got a fear, I got a passion, and that thing is hitting it square in its head. I want that. Okay? That is how we make buying, how most people anyway make buying decisions. Okay, let's talk about specific situations now. I mean, your elevator pitch, SCORE has all kinds of programs about about elevator pitches and how you do them. But here's the key to success with these. Don't say what you do. Hi, I'm Cliff Ennico. I'm an insurance salesman. Hi, I'm Cliff Ennico. I'm a lawyer. Don't do that. I mean, the L word especially, lawyer, carries a lot of baggage with that. I mean, some of you, when you heard I was a lawyer, you might have turned me right off, quite frankly. And I wouldn't blame you, because let's face it, talking to a lawyer is not one of life's more pleasant experiences. I made that comment earlier. People don't call their lawyers when they're having a nice day. I always try to avoid putting a label on myself, because labels carry baggage. When I'm doing an elevator pitch, here's how I do it. I first of all say who my customers are. Who do I serve? In the immortal words of Bob Dylan, when you have a business, you have to serve somebody, if you remember that old song. It's an old Bob Dylan song. You have to serve somebody. Who are the people you serve? Who are the people you care about? Who are the people whose lives you try to make better? How do you impact their lives? How do you make their lives better? And this is very key, people these days have extremely short memories. If I try to throw a lot of facts at you, you're probably going to remember 1 in 10 when you wake up tomorrow morning. But if I tell you a cute story, you will remember that story. It may be the only thing you remember about me, but that is the only thing that you will remember about me. And that may be all that's necessary to have to get a new client, a new customer. I'll give you a very good example. This is a company I actually ran once. Back in the 1990s, I had a desktop publishing company that I did out of my house. Here are 2 elevator pitches for the same company. Okay, pitch number 1. Hi, I'm Cliff Ennico, president of Bienix Corporation. We are a legal publisher specializing in the career vertical. Now, everything I said in that statement was 100% accurate, but how many of you absorbed it? Probably nobody. Okay, hi, I'm Cliff Ennico. I am a legal publisher. I publish books for lawyers. How many of you think that that's an exciting, dynamic career path? Most of you probably don't. You probably think I'm covered in dust and I live in a library somewhere, right? That's that kind of thing, right? And then I go on to say, who specializes in the career. What the hell is he talking about? That's MBA speak. That's jargon. I don't understand that. Okay, now let me give an elevator pitch for that same company, but in a slightly different way. Hi, I'm Cliff Ennico. I'm president of Bienix Corporation. We are the leading publisher of books, audio tapes, and seminars for lawyers and other legal professionals to help them with managing their career. We don't tell them how to become better lawyers. We tell them how to be more successful. One of our books, The Legal Job Interview, A Guide to Interviewing for a Legal Job, was the book most frequently stolen from law libraries around the country, according to a recent survey of law librarians. Okay, now did that resonate more with you than my first one? I think it did. What did I do? I told you who I serve. We do things for lawyers and other legal professionals. How do we impact their lives? We focus on helping them manage their careers better. And then I told you that wonderful story about, and which, by the way, is very true, and I'm very proud to say I'm also the author of that book. For several years in a row, back in the late 90s, early aughts, my book on the legal job interview, How to Win the Law-Related Job in Any Market, was the book most frequently stolen from law libraries around the United States. Doesn't say very much for the ethics of my profession, but it certainly is great dust jacket copy. And boy, I made hay with that. Okay. Selling online is a little bit different. Most of the time, I've been talking about live sales techniques. But you can use these same techniques online. The thing you have to know about the web is a pull medium. You cannot force your message onto people that don't want it. If I want to send you an email you don't want to see, you have a spam filter that will prevent it from getting through. If I want you to see a pop-up ad for my law practice, you have pop-up blockers. You have all this stuff on your computer. When you're looking for stuff online, you, the consumer, are in control. You see what you want to see, and you don't see what you don't want to see. The trick to selling online is you've got to seduce people into wanting to check out your website and social media. You've got to get them there first so that you want them to look for you. How do you do this? Well, I could give a whole class on this, and I probably will at some point in the near future. But your website, your social media, has to be set up the way your buyers actually search. When you're looking for somebody like me, do you search for attorneys or do you search for lawyers? okay? My SEO, my search engine optimization, has to be done in such a way that both searches will get to me. And the second thing, and this is mostly important, your website should contain only information that buyers care about. Lawyers are by far the biggest problems here. Look at most lawyers' websites, and what do you see? You see a photo of the lawyer, and he talks about all the great cases that he's won and all this kind of stuff, and the articles that he's written and all that kind of stuff. Let me tell you something. You don't care what your lawyer looks like. You don't care what they look like. You don't care if they're handsome or butt ugly. You really don't care. And you also don't care how many articles they've written. There are only two things you care about when you're looking to hire a lawyer. Can they do the job, and can I afford them? That is the only two things you care about. So go to my website at cliffennico.com. This is the website for my law practice. I have a bunch of them, but this is the one for my website for my law practice. Go in there, and all you will see are, hi, I'm Cliff Ennico. Here are some of the things. I don't even call myself a lawyer. I say, here are some of the things I do for folks. And then I form corporations and LLCs. I draft contracts. I do this. I do that. Why do I do it that way? Because when people search for lawyers, they don't search for small business lawyer. They're looking for lawyer for drafting contract. And I want the SEO to be guided toward that, so that search gets to me and not my competition. Then the second thing I do is I've got my fee schedule up there. I actually put my fees up on my website. Hey, people don't like talking about fees with attorneys. They get very nervous about that. I take all the fear out of the process. Here's my fees. This is what it's going to cost. You want to form an LLC? This is what the fee is going to be, plus filing fees. You'll call me. I'll give you a quote. That's how I do my business. And there are lawyers in this country who think that I am the Antichrist because I do that. But let me tell you, I'm getting a lot of work right now that they're not getting because my website only has the stuff that they want to see. So those are the keys. At some point I will do, I think, another program on selling online, but the same rules apply. Your website should be all about your customers' fears and passions, not about you. Okay. Let's talk about networking meetings. I am not a big fan of networking meetings. I have to be honest with you. I mean, I speak at a lot of them around the country, and I got to tell you, I just don't see a lot of people really getting business out of them. They do serve a purpose. Let's face it, when you're running a business for yourself, it's very lonely. You want to look for kindred spirits, for people who are like yourself, and networking meetings are places to find them. But if you're looking for business, there are lots better places to find them. Let's just put it that way. But if you do decide to do a lot of networking meetings, if that's something that works with you, remember your high school dating scene. Remember what it was like in high school, okay? And I really hate doing this to you, okay? You always knew the people, the most popular women, men, whatever, played a little hard to get. They didn't go slobbering, chasing after what they wanted. They kind of were a little aloof, weren't they? They made you come to them. Well, networking meetings are kind of like those high school meat markets. They are a little bit like that. Whenever you're at a networking meeting and you're talking to someone, follow the 3 steps. Keep as quiet as possible. Focus on them. Get them talking about what it is they do, whatever. Never offer your card unless someone asks for it, by the way. Offering somebody your card shows that you're desperate. You know, when some guy comes up to me, it's always a guy, by the way, it's never a woman. Whenever I do a networking meeting, especially some guy comes up to me, and, hey, Cliff, I'm so-and-so, and here's my business card, and he sells life insurance. Inevitably, it's always a life insurance salesperson. Always. They always do this. And seriously, and my response is, well, that's too bad. I got 5 life insurance people that I deal with on a daily basis. I don't have room for any more. That's the end of that conversation. There you go. My friend sneezed over here, so that means it's true. Here's a dirty little trick, by the way. And by the way, this is actually something I've done myself, and it's very effective. When somebody asks for your card, don't give it right away. Don't give it to them. I say, you know what? I mean, look, business cards are cheap. It's not a question of that. It's just that right now I don't really know you, Joe. You're a nice guy. I mean, you know, you seem to know what you're doing, but right now I don't even know if I can help you or not, to be honest with you. You know, before I open up a line of communication, I kind of want to know, you know, a little bit more about you. I want to find out more about you. I want to find out what you're all about to see if there's a way that I can possibly help you. I don't want to waste any of our time, you know, just handing out business cards. That's a useless activity. Trust me, if you do that, it's instant respect. At a networking meeting. You know, again, you're playing a little bit hard to get here. You're saying, I don't give my card to just anyone, but I may give it to you if you're special. So let's summarize. Let's these are my key takeaway points. I know I've kind of rushed this. I do have some YouTube videos up on my YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com and search for Cliff Ennico, always Cliff, never Clifford, you'll see I have a whole bunch of videos up there. Some of them are score presentations I've done over the years, and I go into a lot more. I get a lot more granular on some of these topics. But for today, the key takeaway points are selling is an essential activity. If you're going to be successful in business, it must be done, and you got to find a way for being comfortable with it. Cold calling seldom, if ever, works because it shows people you don't really care about them. All you care about is your inventory and cleaning out that basement full of rotten fish. You don't really care about them. It's not about people's needs and wants. It's about people's fears and passions. Empathize with your buyer's fears and passions, and they will like you, and more likely than not will buy from you. And if they don't buy from you, even if they don't buy from you after going through all this, because they like you, they may be more willing to help you find customers, clients, whatever it is you are looking for out there. They'll be more willing to help you with your networking because they like you and they'll want to help you out. In your sales pitches, be memorable. One of the hardest things to do is to make people remember you 2 or 3 days after you've given a presentation, a sales talk, appeared at their offices, done whatever. You got to do something, legal and ethical, of course, to make yourself be memorable and include at least one story in all your presentations that will help people remember you. You may not remember what my name is 3 days from now, but you're definitely going to remember some of the stories that I've told in this presentation, and that's why I try to sprinkle as many of them in. And then one last point, and then we'll take questions. If you are currently between jobs, the techniques that I've described in the last hour work in job interviews too, because those, after all, are sales meetings. You're selling yourself. You're selling your resume. That's all I have to say. Here is my little sales pitch here. And
okay, thanks, Cliff. We do have a few minutes for questions here. Cliff, I'm going to take one here from Wayne Thompson and go back to when you were talking about fears and passions. And Wayne's question is, how do you talk to people about their fears and passions? Maybe some examples of how you get them to start talking about that.
It's a good question, and it always helps if you know what they are ahead of time, if you know what the target is. It's very hard to sell things to people you don't know at all. It's very hard to do. You end up cold calling. You kind of have to know what their lives are like, and so that you can steer the conversation from the very beginning toward where you want them to go. So I'll give you an example. When most people think of lawyers, what turns lawyers on? Well, most people would think, greed, money, we're a bunch of money-grubbing SOBs. That's what people think about when they think of lawyers. But let me ask you a question. What is a lawyer's greatest fear? What do lawyers worry about more than anything else? Believe it or not, there's an answer to this question. One of the state bar associations out in the Midwest does a survey every year of lawyers' satisfaction with their careers and their lives and stuff. And they actually ask the question, what is your biggest concern? What is your biggest fear when you think about your practice, where it's going? And every year the same thing comes out as number one, like by a huge margin too, okay? What do you think that something is? Well, being sued for malpractice, losing your license, number 2, and number 3. Getting sued for malpractice, number 2, losing your license, number 3. Losing a key client, number 5. Getting negative publicity and adverse review, like on Yelp, number 8. Okay. Believe it or not, the number one thing that lawyers worry about is basically spending too much time at the office. So, the law is a very intense profession. When you're a lawyer, there really isn't time to do a whole lot of other things with your life. And a lot of lawyers worry that they're going to grow old not knowing who their kids are, and not seeing them grow up. They're afraid they're going to grow old before they've had a chance to really enjoy life. And that always comes out as number 1 in that law survey. If you know lawyers, if you have them in your family, you know what I'm talking about here. If you don't, you wouldn't have guessed that number 1 in a million years. So my advice to you is do some studying up, get to know people, and let them tell you what the passions are. This is not your job. Get them to open up and tell you what those are.
Okay, that's great. The next one is from Sakina Bazir, and she's saying that managers are almost over 45. I'm assuming she means over age 45, and they already know why they are buying, and getting them to change is never easy.
Well, You're talking here about B2B, business-to-business sales. Well, let me tell you, corporate executives have fears and passions just like everybody else, too. What is a corporate executive's biggest fear? Their biggest fear is that they're going to get laid off, and they're going to end up in a call like this talking to SCORE people about entrepreneurship and alternative career paths. I'm sorry, by the way. I didn't mean to sound pejorative there. But that is a big thing. When you come walking in and you're trying to sell, all they see is risk stamped on your forehead. You're somebody from outside the organization. They don't know you. They know why they want to buy, but also, too, you have to know why they want to buy, too. What are their goals as managers? Are they up for a promotion next year? They want to look good to their bosses. They definitely don't want to screw up in any way. How can you help them achieve those goals better than anybody else that they're talking to? That's how you have to sell these people. It's a fear and passion sell. It's just that it's a little bit different. It's a career-focused fear and passion sell. You have to know a little bit about the organization, where that person stands. Look, Mr. So-and-so, I've done some reading. I know your company has set a huge revenue target for this year. It's going to be a big challenge. If you make that challenge, though, I think a lot of wonderful things are going to happen to you in your life, and I can help you get there faster than anybody else, and here's why. That's how you sell to that. That's an example of how you do a B2B pitch.
Okay, that's great. We're coming up to the top of the hour here, so I think that's all the time we have for questions today. A few reminders, as I mentioned at the beginning, a recording of the webinar and the materials will be available within the next day or so on our website, which is fairfieldcounty.score.org. And also, if you are interested in one-on-one counseling, you can also sign up for free one-on-one counseling on our website as well. And the next webinar will be 2 weeks from today, Tuesday, March 6th. The topic is digital marketing. It's all about the customer experience with Kate Berg presenting. So on behalf of SCORE, I'd like to thank you all for attending today's live webinar, and we'd really appreciate if you could fill out your evaluations that you would get at the end of the session here. So in closing, big thank you to Cliff today for presenting, and have a nice day, everyone.